Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joyce. Hi, how are you? This is going to be a tough crowd. Be nice to me, be nice. Now, I'm here today to talk to you about sexual harassment, which is a form of discrimination prohibited both by the federal government, the state government, and New York City. Again, my name is Joyce Woodruff. I am the director of the State Division of Human Rights, Office of Sexual Harassment Issues, and we enforce the New York State human rights law. My office investigates all complaints of sexual harassment filed in New York State alleging violations of the New York State human rights law. In addition to New York State, it's also considered a form of discrimination covered by the federal government, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. You've probably heard about them, and also the New York City Commission on Human Rights. Just to give you a little bit of history, sexual harassment is actually a form of sex discrimination. And you probably, so if you look through books, you're not going to see sexual harassment in law. You're going to see it really discussed as a form of sex discrimination. It's covered under Title VII of the Human Rights Law, which prohibits discrimination based on race, creed, sex, marital status, disability, age, and many other lesser bases, but those are the ones that you probably hear about most often. The New York State human rights law also prohibits discrimination based on certain categories. Again, it's race, creed, disability, age, marital status, sexual orientation, sex, disability, if I didn't mention, and then there are some other minor blockbusting, etc. These forms of discrimination are prohibited in employment. So in other words, you don't have to be a subject of sexual harassment when you come to work. It's also prohibited in housing. In other words, your landlord or super also is prohibited from sexually harassing and or discriminating against you in any of the forms I discussed. And it's also prohibited in places of public accommodation. So if you go somewhere, if you go to a bookstore and someone is sexually harassing you, or you are in the subway and a subway employee is harassing you, that's also a prohibited form of discrimination in New York State. You have materials, so I'm going to slowly take you through some of your materials. Now, a few minutes before we take our break, I'm going to ask you to just fill this out so we can discuss it a little bit when we come back. Oh, sure.
Anthony, here or no? That's mine.
You don't have one?
Can I have one?
Actually, no.
Can I have one?
You need one also? Can you share that one?
Pens, Anthony. We need
David, do you have the extra packet I gave? The extra packet? Oh, okay. Who else needed one? Oh, we're going to run out. Oh, they stopped. Did you guys run out there also? Okay, we're going to need some extra of that particular. This is someone I'm going to grab this because they took all mine. We're going to need some extra copies at some point. Can you ask someone to make some extra copies of this one? Just maybe 10. Okay? Just maybe like 20 copies of that one. Really? Yeah, they're going to make more of that one, I think. I'm going to steal this. Okay, great. Yeah. Everyone's moving? What guy? Oh, hi, how are you? I need probably about maybe 20 copies of this and maybe 10 of that one. This is obviously the big one. This is probably more. Yeah, I'm going to grab you back. Gonna wait a few minutes for everyone to get organized. Wait a few minutes for
Once again, I want to apologize for the distraction. The material is supposed to come at 10 in the morning. When they deliver it late, you can't leave it on the side.
Okay, what are these, pens? No, it's okay. Let me get these pens. I can't whistle, so at some point someone's going to have to whistle for me. Get them to quiet down.
You got your whistle? Not yet, not yet, not yet. Hey! Give out the pens.
Okay, everyone have a pen? All right, we're gonna get started now again. I can't whistle, so hopefully we're gonna get. Everyone have a pen? Okay, we're going to have some additional materials. Whoa, okay, all right. I guess that worked. We're going to have some additional materials, so anyone who hasn't received the packet will receive one in the next few minutes. First, let me start by defining who can be sexually harassed. Anyone can be sexually harassed. Traditionally, there was a stereotype that sexual harassment pertained only to women. But although it's a form of sex discrimination, anyone can be sexually harassed. About 20% of the complaints in my office are filed by men. Complaints are filed alleging men believe they were sexually harassed. Women, it can be men on men, female on female. There are no boundaries to sexual harassment. As a matter of fact, the number of complaints filed by men have continued to increase. Because if you look at the history of sexual harassment, it's really about power. Although the perception is that it's purely about sex, it's really about power. So as more and more women, I guess, attain positions of power or interact in the workplace, obviously problems occur coming in both directions. Although I must point out that women are more likely, we still have 80% of our complaints are filed by women alleging sexual harassment by men. What exactly is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment, which is defined, by the way, in your packet, so you can take a look at your packet later on. It's very simple, layperson definitions. Sexual harassment is any form of sexual behavior which affects someone in the workplace, which is severe and pervasive, and affects the term of condition of their employment. Sexual harassment can include language. So if someone's making inappropriate jokes that you feel are unwelcome, you're objecting to those jokes, and the person continues. Sexual harassment can be written material. If someone's giving you documentation, paperwork, notes, inappropriate pictures, magazines, that can be a form of sexual harassment. Again, if you're telling the person to stop and the person continues. It can also be text. Often people don't realize that the internet, all documents that you send, obviously, can be kept. They're preserved, often preserved indefinitely. So you have to be cautious about how you use, obviously, electronic media. If you're sending people inappropriate text messages, that's probably one of the easiest cases, obviously, to prove, because we just ask them to preserve the hard drive, and voila, the evidence is there. So again, sexual harassment can come in any form. And the most important thing for you to remember as an employee is if you feel you're a victim of sexual harassment, you have to let the person know that you feel that you're being sexually harassed. You have to object, and you have to ask them to stop. That's one of the most important points in sexual harassment. Once you've told the person to stop, you actually have now asserted your right to object, and actually that's when the law comes into play. Because if you are engaging in that behavior with a person, it's not considered illegal, because it's considered welcome. So if you and I are joking, and we're making sexual jokes, and I'm sorry to use you, but you happen to have come and sit right in the front, so you're here, then if you try to file a complaint, most likely that complaint would be dismissed.
So what's the process again? I'm sorry. You said let them know.
The most important thing in the first step is to let the person know. Because in many circumstances, you might not know I'm objecting. Quite often they start subtle. Or it might be a request for a date. And the person may not know that this is something that you're not interested in. So it's very important to make it clear, obviously without being rude. No, I'm not interested, or, I don't appreciate that joke. I don't like that type of joke. Be courteous, but be direct. What we often say is don't make it, but stop. Because that's kind of sending a mixed message. If it's truly something that you're objecting to, you should let the person know right away. Because it's beyond that point, and if a person continues, that usually the law is going to come into play. Now, after you've told the person to stop, if the behavior continues, the next step would be to inform a supervisor or someone in management or someone in a position of authority that can assist and intercede to help you. And on the flip side, if I'm speaking to someone who actually is someone who is engaging in inappropriate behavior, just remember what I just said. The most important thing is to stop. Usually 1 or 2 incidents of inappropriate behavior or objective behavior is not going to get you into problems. But I will tell you, and I'm sure your supervisors here will tell you, if you're engaged in behavior 1, 2, 3, 4 times, your supervisor is telling you to stop, your coworker is telling you to stop, and you're not. Most likely at some point, because at that point the person has a right to file a complaint, they're going to be forced to take action against you, whether it be written action, whether it be terminations. Quite